time. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh once again. One of the poisons to the heart that can harden the heart and prevent a person from doing what is pleasing to Allah and avoid what is displeasing to Allah is keeping bad company. This is the third poison to the heart mentioned by the Salaf to have the greatest adverse effect on a person's heart, leading to the hardness of the heart. And the effect of it, the parable of it, a good or bad company, is already mentioned in the famous hadith of Rasulullah as collected by Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, where Abu Musa radiallahu anhu reported from Rasulullah that indeed the parable of a good company and a bad company is only that of a seller of musk and a blacksmith. The seller of musk will give you some perfume, you will buy some, or you will notice a good smell. As for the blacksmith, يعني as a parable example of a bad company, he will burn your clothes or you will notice a bad smell. So one cannot escape the influence, the effect of one's company on them. There's no way that you can avoid the effect of the company that you have. The more you have of this company, the greater the effect they will have on you this way or that way. We can't escape it. There's no way to escape it. One should never overestimate themselves thinking, oh no, it's not going to affect me, I'm all good. Nor underestimate the influence of a person's company on them, on their heart, in the way they think and feel, and their deeds. For indeed, it does affect. Even if you cannot escape the bad company, whether it's at work or your college, your institute, or at home, or amongst your relatives, if you can't escape it, for whatever reason. You can always minimize the interaction if you cannot correct it, if you cannot amend it, if they're not benefiting from your company. If they're not benefiting from your company, rather their company is adversely affecting you, then you can always cut down to some extent. But it doesn't mean that you give up, but you can, take your time. But do not underestimate the effect of a bad company. Because a lot of times, a lot of people who having knowledge of the deen of Allah are struggling to implement it because they underestimate the influence of their bad company on them. Their inability to, literally, their inability to practice what they preach even. So one should be conscious of who you surround yourself with. When Rasulullah has made it clear, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala above all has made it clear in the Quran, how can we then, based on our opinions, based on our logic, come up with another solution? Because the fact of the matter is that the heart is very fragile. The delicacy of the heart makes it very vulnerable to many things around us. Besides the unnecessary speech, unrestrained glances, even the company can affect the heart. One of the questions I was asked yesterday was, what if you are stuck with a bad company? It's not your choice, but that is a situation. You can't escape it at all. So just as I mentioned yesterday, and what I just mentioned right now, it depends on the situation. For instance, if the gathering you're at, the company you're in, if in it some sin is being openly committed, right? Then as we understood from the hadith of Rasulullah, reported by Bukhari, that all of my ummah will be forgiven. All of my ummah may be forgiven. They may be forgiven, all of them, except for those who commit sin openly. Now, if a person sits with people who sin openly, now either you be sitting with them while they're sinning, which is not permissible. And one of the references is the 140th ayah of Surah An-Nisa. If the person does not stop committing the sin, leaving that gathering is a must. You can explain to them even why you're leaving or why you can't be sitting there. Maybe it will benefit them. They may reflect upon it. Even if they don't, you can let them know. The other situation is where the person is not committing sin at that very moment when you're sitting with them. At that moment, they're not sinning. In that situation, it's not a sin to sit there. If they're not sitting there next to you and committing a sin openly, then it's okay to sit there with them, right? Now, if you wonder, do I have to always put myself in that situation where I choose or have to consider, okay, are they sinning now? There's something, no, you don't have to make things very complicated for yourself. But remember, if you do not have an alternative, a better company to spend most of your time with, to benefit you or who can benefit from you, instead of neither they're benefiting from you nor can you benefit from them. Rather, they can have adverse effect on your heart, making it hard, then you can, without completely cutting off, you can minimize the interaction or keep yourself busy, as we found out from the example of one of the Salaf, how he would keep himself busy to avoid a bad company that he couldn't escape at all, like completely. So you can busy yourself, so you can do multitasking while they're there, you can be doing something else. That's okay. But if you have a choice to avoid such a company, you're not in a state where you don't have a, where you do have a choice, and you're not stuck there in that situation, then this is not a company that you should choose for yourself. The level of your concern for your heart, the level of your concern for your sincerity, the level of your concern for your deeds and your honor in the sight of Allah, the level of your concern for your deen and the pleasure of Allah will reflect upon your choices, your decisions. And sometimes we have to make difficult decisions for ease in the long run. But while you make the decisions, as far as the company is concerned, remember to keep as a priority pleasure of Allah, the pleasure of Allah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst those who, when making decisions, even of who we should keep around us, that we keep the pleasure of Allah, the mindfulness of Allah, the honor in the sight of Allah as the first priority. If there are any questions you may ask, we will otherwise end the session here. Inshallah. One of the questions that was asked yesterday, I just answered about if you're in a company that you cannot avoid, like amongst family, and has bad influence on you. So how you can minimize the interaction, that's the answer basically. But every situation is not the same. So it has to be considered what the particular situation is, what kind of sin specifically is being committed, to what extent does it affect others, even if it doesn't really affect others as such, like apparently, any sin that is openly being committed has to be denounced. And as Rasulullah has told us that the best way to do that is by chaining it with the hand once you see some bad deed. If you can't do that, because doing that can lead to greater harm, greater evil, greater sin than by your speech. If you can do that, or you have been doing that, but to no avail in at least dunya, apparently, or if you can't do that because it can lead to greater sin, then the least of iman is to hate it in your heart. And beyond that, there is no faith. There's no trace of faith then. If a person doesn't even dislike or, hate that sin. But remember one thing, do not hate the sinner, but the sin, okay? There's always hope for people. Make dua for them, but do not underestimate the effects of the sins on your own heart. That's the whole point. So we're trying to protect our own hearts. Inshallah. Social media, okay. Yeah, if you are being exposed to things which are displeasing to Allah. Like one of the many reasons, for instance, I myself, even though you may be listening to me on social media, but one of the reasons I myself am not there, it's because one of the many reasons, besides lack of time and this is because I can foresee, considering the different examples, different people that I deal with, including those who are preachers and du'ati, that even when you're trying to do the good through social media, if you're too involved, it can have a really bad effect on a person. You get too concerned with the number of subscribers and the likes and the following and this and this and this. The whole intention gets messed up, let alone other things, if someone says something or a troll or whatever. So, it's just better to avoid it as far as you can. But if a person does, the question being, is social media also considered as company? Yeah, I mean, that's for sure. That's for sure. But then what do you do with it? How do you restrict yourself? How do you hold yourself back from not going to a certain page or not checking out the comments in a certain place or this or that, So you have to make those decisions, the tough decisions, and controlling your own self, because social media and before that, like TV, all of this is like a knife. You can chop vegetables and fruit, but you can also kill someone, hurt someone. So it's how you use it, with what purpose, to what extent, it's how you use it. And Allah knows best. Okay, there's another question. Okay, so if a person is a banker and goes to office with the riba is the basis of business, I have just few years of service left behind. At this age, I can't change source of income. How can I avoid it or minimize it? If it's absolutely impossible, or you did try and you cannot find another job, or even in the banking system, a better system. If it's impossible, then you can try to avoid the such transactions, at least to minimize, subside the sin, the effect of it, to avoid such transactions which are blatant riba. And riba in all forms is the riba. But if you, as you say, that you have a few years of service left and you're at an age and circumstances where you can't change your source of income, and because you have so many dependents on you, and you have, if tried to find another job or within the banking system, another system, a better, based more on Islamic system, and it's not possible at all, like genuinely not possible, you tried, then just try to better this system, play your role here, make awareness of the major sin involved here, and also make sure that you avoid such transactions which are blatant usury. And of course, anyone who gives up anything for the sake of Allah, Allah will replace it for him with something better. That's not going to be the most easiest thing. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also tells us in the Quran, and the meaning of which is that the one who puts their trust in Allah, Allah will make ways for them in places they had not even imagined. And we know people who have given up for the sake of Allah, out of fear of Allah, out of fear of the akhirah. What if there is no tomorrow? They're giving up for the sake of Allah. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested them for some time. But then after some tests, when they were being shakir and sabir, like persistently grateful and persistently patient, Allah did indeed, being the most truthful, He did replace it with something else, and not just replace it, but replace it with something better. So never underestimate the fact that Allah Azza wa Jal indeed is able to do all things. وَهُوَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. Yeah. Okay. But we will stick to the questions about the topic for now here on having bad or good company. All right. The other questions can be sent into the admin, inshallah, and we can address them in the groups that we have with you guys, inshallah. If any other questions are here about the particular topic, good or bad company, the third poison to the heart, then I'll answer them. Otherwise, we'll end the session, inshallah. But do please send in the other questions to the admin or to the groups that you're in with me on the Telegram, inshallah. Okay. All right. Okay, so we'll end the session here. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to make the decisions which are best for our akhirah, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to trust Him unconditionally. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to, out of taqwa and of the standing before Him, bear with some of the hardships of dunya. And remember that the reward is with Allah, the ease is from Allah, the goodness, the source of all goodness and ease is only Allah. Okay? And He is Raziq. Okay, He is Ar-Raziq. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.